Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about alcohol was the only thing propping up the excitement. This is from Prius Turbo. Is there such a thing as a turbo in a Prius? I suppose there is. Okay. Hardest part for me is that I used alcohol to get excited about doing things in the past, going to an event, a show, dinner, date, etc. I don't get all jacked up in a good way about things these days unless they are really something special. But this actually makes me say no to a lot of things that I used to just throw down a few drinks and go to that weren't actually fun or enjoyable. So the alcohol was only propping them up. Okay, so I think this started out as I thought this was this is one of the hardest things, difficult things about life without alcohol. But then he goes on to explain these things and it makes much more sense. I mean, getting excited, a part of that getting excited is about the anticipation of what you're going to do in life, right? Looking forward to things, planning things, and not only what you're going to do tonight, but tomorrow, next week, next month, etc., etc. And I think that's what all drug habits become. The drinking habit definitely became that for me. I was more interested in the anticipation part of the drinking than I was in the actual partaking. I mean, the partaking was just habitual. So obviously, if I didn't partake, then the anticipation wouldn't have been a thing. But the anticipation was most of the buzz for me. So I would, look forward to going out the weekends. But if I was going to the pub in the evening, I would not. I worked a manual job. We had a forestry company, and we were not only working in forestry. I mean, we'd go to a bar at the end of the day if we were staying away, but also we did private gardens, hedges and trees and things like that. And if we were local, I would always, from 12 o'clock onwards, from lunchtime, I would not drink anything for the rest of the afternoon, or very little. So that the anticipation of going for that drink and having that first pint when I sat at the bar was heightened, right? And I think all instant gratification habits become that way. The more you do them, they become more about anticipation than anything else. And saying no, this actually makes me say no to a lot of things that I used to just throw down a few drinks and go to that weren't actually fun or enjoyable. I mean, that's a good thing. I think when you say yes to everything, you kind of, one of the things about life is that you create freedoms for yourself by boxing yourself in certain ways, right? By putting up barriers to certain things in your life so that you can focus on other things in your life. I focus on doing this as a job, and a lot of my studies, a lot of the things that I read are specifically about this job, and I won't take myself outside of that to do other things because I know that the time that I have is best served doing that, right? I've got only so much time and energy to do the other things in my life, right? And, I tend to choose very carefully now what I want to do, and I say no to a lot more than the things that I say yes to, right? So, when I was going to a bar, it was always the same, always listening to the same nonsense, listening to the same people. Not only listening, I was doing the talking as well. So, talking the same nonsense, but it was that same conversation every day. And no matter how many times I actually went to the bar, it became the same thing. So you don't have really one memory of, oh, that was a great night, or this was a great night. It had to be an outstanding night with something out of the ordinary that happened for me to remember it. Otherwise, it was just a nothingness. It was just all the memories become one because it's all the same thing, and it just never left me with any feeling of achievement, any real satisfaction, and it never led me anywhere. I used to, one of the things when Sean was young, when he was kind of in his early teens, and he's starting to get boisterous, I decided to take him to Taekwondo, and we did that 3 times a week. And we went there, we put on the uniforms, we did all the patterns. We learned all the ritual, the discipline. I can't remember what the tenets of Taekwondo now were. It's a long time ago, but it was self-control, those kind of things. And it was like a very disciplined activity. And I used to finish work, I'd be tired, but I'd go to this and feel energized by the time I came out. Never say that about going to a bar or drinking. And I never felt like drinking once I got out of there. It was always, like I felt like I'd achieved something. We went to tournaments and there was a great community there. And it was just a great thing. I wish I'd have kept it up. But I think once Sean decided that, enough was enough, he wanted to do other things, chasing girls, all that kind of stuff, then, it was the bell tolled for that for me as well. But saying no to shite events or things that you don't want to do, things that are not fun or enjoyable, and you need alcohol to prop those things up, that says everything. It says everything about the drinker's life, that you need alcohol. I mean, the more that you drink, the more that your life becomes focused on the drink. So the more things are pulled into this black hole of the habit, the addiction, whatever you want to call it. And everything in your life then becomes about the alcohol and nothing else. And, you might not be at that stage yet yourself, but that's where it heads if you keep down that path. It always heads that way. There's no other way of it going. We're still creatures of habit, and I think I like to keep those, as I said, keep the anticipation and keep that excitement going for the times when it really matters, going to family dues and family outings and parties and things like that to do with your family. These people, or good friends, that kind of thing. So, look, habits, the alcohol habits specifically, bad habits in general, instant gratification habits tend to come with all kinds of rubbish attached to them, like I said, because of that, there are certain things that you need alcohol for when you're a drinker. And some of those things are, because you are a drinker, you naturally gravitate towards people and places and environments and activities that these people also drink. These are activities that you can do while you're drinking, playing pool, throwing darts, that kind of stuff, nothing really that takes a lot of skill or effort or focus or any of those things are it's certainly not something that we all be stupid in our lives and try and drink and drive and do things like that, and we soon find out, right? Fuck around and find out. But for me, it's so you have to. There's a lot of stuff that you do because you're a drinker. You gravitate towards these things or these people or these activities. But there's also things that you drink because you wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the alcohol. Places and people and talking to people who I've talked to some right dickheads in the bar who there would be no chance that I would talk to if I was sober. I'm not judging these people for themselves and judging these people by the state that they're in the bar, very drunken people, who are not making any sense. But it is what it is, but when you stop drinking alcohol, all that bullshit goes away. All of that bullshit goes away. You feel such a lift in your life. You might not tell yourself that is bullshit when you're in the middle of this, that these people are not bullshit when you're in the middle of this, that these places are not creating that atmosphere in your life. It's one of the things that I discovered about myself once I stopped drinking, were the amount of satellite activities and people that now disappeared from my life. And I felt that vacuum, because everyone was there because I was a drinker. I was there because they were drinkers. The places that I went were because the alcohol was available there. And, it takes a while for you to disengage from that, but you do disengage. slowly but surely. And then life becomes different. And then life becomes better. And then life becomes whatever you make it, And I think without the constraints of the habit, your life can become something of real contentment, and of real growth. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, if you're not looking for growth in life, then it kind of makes no difference, does it, really? If you just want to remain the same person that you always were, then it doesn't make any difference. But as this guy says, there's these things that alcohol was the only thing that were propping these things up. And he says, I don't get all jacked up in a good way about things these days unless there is really something special. But that is the point. You want to find things in your life. You develop things in your life. A lot of these things don't magically come about. They are something that you have to develop slowly but surely, like an evolution, bit by bit. That it becomes not just about the anticipation. I mean, we all like the thrill of the chase, right? Evolutionarily, we like the hunt. We like the thrill of the hunt. That gives you the impetus, the motivation to get up off your arse and go feed yourself, right? Is so that you can find the berries or get the meat, whatever it is. And the dopamine system is all about the hunt. It's about the thrill, the anticipation of chasing, of giving chase, rather than the feast at the end. I mean, I'm not saying that the feast is not good. That's the aim of it, but it's the hunt. That's what we're after, and that's what we're talking about here. Is that anticipation in life? The internet version of this is that scroll. That's the internet version of the. I see so many people doing that nowadays, where there is no end result to it. It's just this endless flick, 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 flick. You see kids doing this. That's the new addiction, I suppose. But when you stop drinking alcohol, you still get that anticipation, but at the end of it, there are really worthwhile intrinsic rewards, because that's what you've designed and built in your life, and it's a deliberate action. You're not doing it out of habit, It does take work, right? I'm not denying that it takes work. It does take work. It takes a certain dedication on your own part, and it takes a lot of there's a lot of ambiguity in the beginning. There's a lot of different choices, and sometimes you have to, as I said earlier, you have to build barriers around yourself in order to narrow the choices right down, because the choices themselves can become so overwhelming that it drives you to a drug like alcohol. Think about alcohol as being when people get into the habit of drinking, the proper, the habitual drinking, the addiction part of things, the alcohol itself becomes the focus. And, in a strange kind of a way, it really gives people, it shuts off that kind of, that overwhelm with all the choices, and it narrows everything down to one thing. And that gives people relief. It's the same thing when people stop drinking alcohol and they go to a doctor, and the doctor says, you're an alcoholic, right? It's a relief for some people to think that way, even though they might not think things through and think, well, how is this going to be when I'm 10 years without a drink and I'm still calling myself an alcoholic? I think at the time it gives people a relief. It labels something, and it narrows down the choice, so they don't have to think outside of that. They can start, I suppose, rebuilding things. But anyway, that's my take on this. Thanks for the comment, Prius Turbo. I hope you have a nice car. Prius Turbo. Alcohol was the only thing that was propping them up. That's what I'll leave you with that one. It's think about how many things in your life are being falsely propped up, like a hot air in a balloon. And without that hot air, what does the balloon do? Collapses. And that's what you want with your alcohol life. Think about all the nonsense that is there because you drink. All the nonsense that you put up with because you drink. All the nonsense people, the environments, the things. And all the internal stuff, right? The hopes and the dreams and the ideas that you have for your own life, that is all put to the side, and we're willing to do that because we can drink and forget about it and focus on this one thing, as I said. So alcohol was the only thing propping them up. If you're looking for help from me, habitsv2.com is our website. We've got a lot of different stuff over there that we can just videos like this, but it's step-by-step videos instead of this type of stuff. And if you have any questions or problems that you would like to solve here on YouTube, leave a comment and I'll have a look at them. Take care of yourself. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. Onwards and upwards. Bye now.